Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here along with Andrew Krammer, the Star Tribune, for our hardcore breakdown of Vikings and Jacksonville Jaguars. And it has to start with the uncertain status of one Trevor Lawrence. Andrew, it seems that there's a good chance that Trevor Lawrence does not play, which then puts Mac Jones behind an offensive line with lots of backups. Hey, their left tackle is here, not there. So that might be a problem for Mac Jones. Their receivers are banged up. Christian Kirk won't be playing. And, well, at least the Jaguars defense can't cover everyone. Other than that, everything seems to be going totally fine in Jacksonville.
Mrs. Lincoln loved to play. Other than that, boy. And their starting guards, Cleveland and Scherf, missed practice on Wednesday, so that's fun. Trevor Lawrence, I saw, even when he is playing, is rated as one of the most inaccurate passers over the last 4 weeks in the NFL, so that's also good. I don't know where to really go with that because Mac Jones against Brian Flores, everybody who's trying to get on that early flight out of Jacksonville after the game, that is going to be a easy, smooth sailing trip because Flores has made Daniel Jones look really bad. Should he made CJ Stroud look really bad in that week 3 win? We see him and this defense continuously dominate subpar opponents. And I think there's little reason to think that's not going to continue in Jacksonville.
So before the news that Lawrence might not play, and it's not 100%, it was unlikely, so who knows, but it sounds like he's not. Before that, I was thinking, this Jaguars team is not good, but they have more talent than their record. And anytime that's the case with a team, I think, they could always surprise you.
Sure.
And they've been in a lot of games, and Trevor Lawrence is talented, so you always have to be really concerned about that. Now with Mac Jones, I don't think that anything could be a trap game for the Vikings because they're a team that no one expected to be this good. They've lost a couple games on the year, but it feels much more like one of those, you better not. You just better not. This isn't like losing to Matt Moore when Matt Moore is playing for the Chiefs. It's an amazing Chiefs team. Would this have been like losing to David Blau a couple years ago? I know they won the game a couple years ago, but it feels that much of a mismatch between the Vikings and the Jaguars. So I guess that's where we should start is what should the Vikings be worried about with the Jaguars?
I think they should be worried about a passing game that when they are at their best can produce. Trevor Lawrence has had a couple near, I think, one 300-yard game, then one near 300-yard game. Evan Ingram coming back for this passing attack has been huge for them as a guy that they will often go to. I just don't think this Jaguars team is one that is going to consistently put together drives, nor are they explosive enough to overcome their lack of consistency of putting together drives against the Vikings. So, but if they put it all together and if it looks at its best, it is Trevor Lawrence being accurate, decisive, running Doug Peterson's offense in a way that wasn't too dissimilar from how Nick Foles ran it as a distributor, as somebody who could hand off to Tank Bigsby and let him run the ball. If they can generate any kind of rushing attack with no offensive line, which we probably think they're not going to be able to do because this Vikings defense has been pretty good at stopping the run, as they showed against Jonathan Taylor. I just think that that is the path for Jacksonville. It's just hard to see them achieving all of these things, considering how bad they've collectively played. And you pointed out before the podcast, it's 1-score games when you look at their schedule, but they were down, 3 scores against Philadelphia and just happened to claw back in garbage time because of how oddly Nick Sirianni seemed to manage that game. So I just think they have been pretty bad. Yes, they brought Green Bay to the ropes earlier in the season. So they can jump up and give you a game. And so if they do give you a game, it's got to be Lawrence playing, in my opinion, and it's got to be him having one of his best games.
Right. If Trevor Lawrence is in the lineup, then there's always a chance that he gets hot and plays well. It's not like he's never played well in his career. He is, how would you even define what Trevor Lawrence has been in his career? Because when other quarterbacks, when they come in the league, they get a lot of time from everybody. Okay, we understand you're a rookie. There's going to be rookie moments, even in a overreactionary league. Like no one's calling Caleb Williams a bust, for example, or Bo Nix even, where he's got his ups and downs this year. But Lawrence has gotten more and more and more time from everyone. Well, look, you were coached by Urban Meyer, so you get like a 4-year, and he had the stretch where he won a bunch of games last year, then got hurt. He had the playoff game that was really good, came very close to winning another one. And then this year, it's not terrible. I was just peeking at his PFF grades, his traditional statistics. They're not horrendous. They're not Jimmy Clausen or something, but they also don't wow you in any way. And I just don't even know what to make of this because there's so much with that organization that is unimpressive and the roster that's unimpressive. But we also can't just blame everybody else for everything when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, right?
No, we can't. And I think they drafted him number 1 overall at Clemson. He looked like that. And he was called the Andrew Luck generational once in a lifetime prospect, which you can't say that every year. And he obviously is not that. He is more like a Dak Prescott to me. When you say not terrible, that's kind of what I think of in terms of quarterback. Who's the 15th best quarterback? I think it's kind of Dak Prescott right there in the middle, right, whether 10th or 15th, whatever you want to call it. Pretty average and bang on, where it's just some days he'll give you a good performance, some streaks he'll give you a good performance, but he's also that guy that has not been consistent. He's also been consistently, I think, let down by a roster and Trent Baalke with the Jaguars. That how much does Baalke really consider? How much does he deserve to keep that job, considering that we've seen them blow draft picks, we've seen them blow free agent signings. We see them trade for and pay Ezra Cleveland, which people here in the Vikings building did not want to do. And we see them acquire Calvin Ridley, who proceeds to have a couple big games, but drop a bunch of passes. And they finally get him help with Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk, but then Doug Peterson doesn't scheme up seemingly a way to funnel targets to those guys consistently in a way that it seemed like he could do in Philadelphia. That's the confusing part with me and Trevor Lawrence is I think he is a average, enigmatic player, inconsistent, but theoretically you should have a good coach and a good coaching staff because of what we've seen Doug Peterson do in Philadelphia. It makes me think it's more of a roster construction problem. And Doug Peterson seems to agree because after one of their losses to the Bears earlier this year, Peterson said, we have a culture problem.
Yeah, I think they have a talent problem is
all of it.
The main thing around Trevor Lawrence, and he's not going to be like Patrick Mahomes and make people significantly better. I also think that he just has fatal flaws. Inconsistency is a fatal flaw for a quarterback.
Sure.
Just because you have a monster arm and you can make some wowing plays, it's really the down-to-down consistency that he lacks. He's good for, and I'm expecting it in this game, 2 or 3 times a game, throwing a ball so baffling to the wrong place, making a decision way too early, not seeing a defense that turns into a turnover. It happens constantly to him. He does take sacks. I don't think that he uses his mobility nearly as much as I expected. When I saw him in college, I thought he was going to be really a dynamic running quarterback. He hasn't really been that. He's not very accurate, as you mentioned. It's just things have not ever really materialized. I think Dak Prescott's a lot better than him, but I see what you're saying. Maybe under the same circumstances, if he had the offensive lines, the coaching, the receiver, CeeDee Lamb, and that he would have similar numbers. But it's a guy that you're not terrified of, but you know is capable of potentially having one of his big games against you. If Mac Jones plays, though, not a whole lot to be terrified of here. He did play well against the 2022 Vikings. You and I also threw for 300 in games against Ed Donatell's defense. It was great. Everyone was wide open. It was really easy. I was never pressured. There was no blitzing. I think that's probably a different Mac Jones under these circumstances. And I also think, to your point, that it's not like anybody who would be coming in for Trevor Lawrence or Trevor Lawrence has coaching that is dialing up an easy offense, an easy button offense that's tricking everybody. I think that Doug Peterson just kept running all the same stuff from Philly and never advanced to what a lot of the things that are happening around the league to get wide receivers open. It just kind of feels that way.
Oh, yeah, or wasn't aligned with the front office that didn't realize you need to build a good offensive line to run your kind of run-heavy RPO system that Peterson did in Philadelphia when they had one of the best offensive lines, and that continued when Peterson left and got fired. So, it seemed like the misalignment there from Jacksonville. You mentioned Trevor Lawrence's mobility. I think as a rookie, he had like 700 rushing yards. Maybe it was his second year in the NFL. He showed that he can do it. It just seems like in this offense, they don't want to lean into it. I don't know if that's the injury history, the health, having just paid him $55 million a year. There's just a lot of questionable decisions. Then again, misalignment of how this team is built in Jacksonville. And now they're just banged up. They trade their left tackle. Christian Kirk's on IR. I think Gabe Davis missed the last week. We mentioned both their starting guards missed practice this week to injuries. and it might be Mac Jones. So I think, and ETN's a guy who's totally disappeared. We haven't even mentioned him. Somebody who last year was one of the best running backs, dual threats in football, this year has not been the same guy. He's dealt with a shoulder injury that he's tried to play through. They've given him minimal work through that. And Tank Bigsby as a rookie has been good at what they've asked him to do, but seems like it's a pretty limited role for him in terms of just running on first and second down. So I not much scares you. And if it's Mac Jones, you saw him look decent at times in New England. You'd think, boy, going back to that 2021 draft, he might have been a good fit in San Francisco in terms of what he can do in terms of being the operational guy, getting the ball to where it needs to be in progression, in rhythm. But he was just traded to Jacksonville. Was it middle of last year?
It was this offseason.
Oh, was it this? Okay, so he hasn't been there very, very long. I don't think he's played a game for them. This will be the first game, if that's the case, he plays for them. No, I don't imagine this is something where you need to be too worried about Mac Jones, nor compare it to that 2022 game.
Hang on. Let me silence my phone real quick so I can tell you that Us Days at US Cellular is back again. Exclusive offers just for customers, just to say thanks. Right now, you'll get $1,200 off any phone plus $400 off any tablet. Amazing, right? But my family is so excited about their new devices, they keep texting me during the show. They're all about Us Days deals like $1,200 off any phone, $400 off any tablet. Terms apply. Visit uscellular.com for details. I feel like Mac Jones shows up somewhere and wins 10 games for a team someday. But
why do you think that?
Well, because he did show that he can do it in his first year when they actually had some weapons around him, and Josh McDaniels, who's not a good head coach, but is a good offensive coordinator. And then the wheels just came off there. Belichick lost his marbles, and they lost McDaniels briefly to the Vegas Raiders. And then they got him no weapons. They got him no line. It was just a total calamity. And we really saw how much Tom Brady was driving the bus there. But I think when somebody at least shows it, we talked about this with Darnold even going into this season. If you can even have a single season or even a stretch where you look like you can play, then probably under San Francisco's circumstances or Minnesota's, Mac Jones would have been good at this because he's not a joker. But what he's taking over here for Trevor Lawrence, if Lawrence can only have an 87 quarterback rating, it's going to be pretty hard, I think, for Mac Jones to move against this Flores defense. Was your confidence in the defense fully restored after they just took an absolute sledgehammer to the Indianapolis Colts?
No, because there were still open receivers. There were still guys running in the middle of the field. There were just missed passes. There was one that early in that game, Flacco fired into the dirt to Doolin, I think one of their wide receivers. It was just wide open on a little kind of easy post route from the outside against zone coverage. I think the Vikings' Achilles heel on defense will always be that they can't play as much man coverage as they wanted to. They're an older secondary. They don't have Mekhi Blackman, who would have been that young guy chasing everybody around with Byron Murphy. They have to rely on Stephon Gilmore, who they signed mid-August, after they put together all those plans of playing a ton of man coverage. If you can protect, and if you have wide receivers who can get open and quarterbacks who can dissect post-snap coverages, you're going to lose. And Joe Flacco could dissect it sometimes. He couldn't throw the ball half the time. He looked pretty bad. And you mentioned, I think, going into that game, this guy's only really had one good game this year after that, miraculous Cleveland run with Amari Cooper at the end of last year. So you kind of called it that he wasn't going to look that great or might not, and he didn't. And so to me, you have to kind of take this with a grain of salt. They didn't blitz a lot. They leaned on their four-man rush. They bet Flacco couldn't pick them apart, and he couldn't. When you face a quarterback eventually, whether it's Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, Goff, and Love again down the road, I still have concerns about if a team dissects and knows your blitzes enough and can pick them up in protection, and you have a quarterback who can either be mobile enough or smart enough in Stafford's case to just pick things apart. It's going to be hard for you because Detroit's still going to have that offensive line. Jordan Love, if healthy, is still going to be incredibly mobile and can do in the second half what he did against you back in September. So long story short, Matt, no, I don't have a ton of concerns eased. I just think this defense is still great enough to beat the bad teams. They will go on a run here, probably that ends with them looking pretty good against Caleb Williams at the end of this month. And we'll be talking about, they're back, top 5. But then it's Kyler Murray, and then it's Kirk Cousins, and then it's that run I'm talking about.
But isn't that always NFL defenses? Like how many
No, because
how many defenses in the league ever are just destroying the good teams?
no, not destroying. That's just it. So yeah, maybe I should measure my comments a little bit. Like they are good enough to compete with Jared Goff in the Lions, but that game might turn into more of a shootout because look, all these generational offenses that are coming in here or quarterbacks in the AFC's case, you can't really put a lid on them, like you're saying. But I think when you talk top 5 defense, though, like we thought when they were 5-0, I don't know if they're quite there.
See, I would just like to pick apart every team's schedule
Sure.
and see like the top 5 defenses.
Do that for
league.
Kansas City, though. They're probably the best defense in the league. I mean, I bet you whoever they go up against, it's been pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, they almost lost to Baker the other night.
Sure.
I mean, that's what I mean is like Baker Mayfield is kind of thrown all over the place this year. They gave up some yards. It's going to happen. With the Rams game, that was a bad performance, and that's as bad as they're going to be. That was a great game plan on 4 days rest. I'm not saying that they're better than they looked against the Lions and Rams. The Achilles heels are the Achilles' heels.
Yeah.
And we know what they are, that they don't have an Aaron Donald to just destroy on the inside. They don't even have a Tom Johnson to destroy on the inside.
They don't have a young corner who can run. Other than Byron.
Those routes that come across the middle of the field, they're going to work. I do think that Cashman coming back, I think he is this week, that he was shutting a lot of those down.
Yeah.
He was identifying those and he was getting back on them and making plays where we haven't seen. There's been too much on Josh Metellus' plate, I think, the last few weeks, too much on Ivan Pace's plate the last few weeks. They are a different team when Cashman is in there. So when they're both of their bad performances were without, I think, their best player on defense, maybe it's a little bit different. I just think that we always do this when we talk about, well, this team's a top 5 defense, but they gave up yards to good offenses. That's like the world we live in. But when will we see them tested again? I mean, it's a long time. It's like what, Arizona?
December.
December is the next time they'll get tested. It's not going to be this week.
No.
So I was buying one of the things. Okay. Here's another thing too. Last week we talked about the adjustments that needed to be made. How much can they fix? That was the theme of our show. How much did they fix is now my question for you.
Yeah, well, all the talk about the offense has been about their pre-snap penalties. It's been about their operational stuff with Sam Darnold, who clearly Kevin O'Connell felt like we can clean up the penalties. We can make this whole thing more efficient. It doesn't all need to be on Sam making the right reads all the time or forcing the ball downfield exactly when it needs to be. They can just stop shooting themselves in the foot. And yeah, it turns out if you do that, it looks pretty good. Their scoring drives did not involve many offensive penalties. I believe they only had 2 the whole game against the Colts. So that allowed them to keep moving, give it to Aaron Jones on first down, not feel like he got to throw on 1st and 20 and whatever. I think that part worked, streamlining the offense, giving them what seemed like either shorter play calls or fewer play calls in the huddle to run at the line of scrimmage. That seemed to work with Sam. That's good coaching. That shows you that what they were asking, and Wes Phillips kind of alluded to this when he said, at some point we can just keep asking these guys to do the same thing. And at some point you got to look in the mirror and be like, okay, maybe we need to change this. So credit the Vikings staff for realizing that with Sam Darnold, we can't totally treat this guy like Kirk Cousins, can't give him all of that. So I think that part has been fixed. I still want to know about the short yardage run game, the red zone run game, because this game turned out the way it did against the Colts, or at least felt that way in the second half, because Sam Darnold threw the hell out of the ball in the red zone. Whenever they do that, they win. He did that against the Packers. He did that against the Texans. If you're not having to settle for field goals and Sam Darnold's throwing darts in the end zone, that's when they're at their best. What we have seen is that they cannot run the ball in those short yardage spots, or even when it gets backed up within goal to go scenarios. So I don't think that part's fixed. And when it comes to the offense, I want to know, when you get inside the 20, is it still going to be all on Sam Darnold? Because this guy is doing more than just about any quarterback inside the 20s.
I mean, I think that Sam Darnold is going to continue to have to do a lot. They just don't have an offensive line that gets a lot of push there. And they also don't seem to have any trickeration, any misdirection. And I don't mean throwing the ball with Jefferson in the red zone. I just mean getting the defense moving one way and going the other. We just don't see a lot of that in the run game. Their best answer was to try to run a jet sweep with Jalen Naylor, and that didn't work either.
We saw one work with Addison, and that was about it.
I think one did work with Naylor against someone. Was it a 4th down call against the Texans? That worked. And also maybe the spot was bad in Green Bay. The point is you just can't run jet sweeps all the time on 4th and 1. They have to have someone they trust to run behind. And if there was going to be that person, it was going to be 71. But instead, he's out for the season. I don't think Cam Robinson is that guy that you're saying, oh, run behind him. Maybe you could put CJ Ham and Josh Oliver in. But even in terms of a formational creativity for running the ball, we never see it. If they're going to run out of just going to be like a single back, and he's going to run one of two ways. And Aaron Jones has to be great all the time. But I think down in the red zone, it's not about the running back as much as it is the line. So, and the strategy. So I don't think that's going to change. As far as what's on Sam Darnold's shoulders, it was interesting because I felt like it went both ways. There was more on his shoulders in terms of volume, like get the offense moving, early passes, which I wanted to see more of, but there was less, hey, why don't you send 6 guys in motion and check to 3 different things? I thought Justin Jefferson nailed it. Justin Jefferson's football IQ, understanding, vision is amazing. And I got the sense that Jefferson said to O'Connell, cut the stuff. Let me go beat a dude. Let Jordan go beat a dude. Let Hawkinson go beat a dude. And if they keep doing that, I think that the offense is going to be better than it was. And it's going to operate smoother. And Darnold is going to get in rhythm and be more comfortable and not have these big slowdowns, because a delay of game isn't just bad for your drive. It's like demoralizing, frustrating. It just halts what you're doing. So I think Jefferson played a big role in that change, and it worked really well.
Well, and this offense is so talented. What's the saying? Call players, not plays, right? And that's the whole thing. Like, don't overthink this. Don't ask them to do so much where you're trying to out-scheme the defense when Justin Jefferson or Jordan Addison or TJ Hawkinson or Aaron Jones can one-on-one beat whoever's across from them. Make it simpler. And it seemed to be that way too, just whether it was the route concepts Justin was getting targeted on, or even just the basic little fade on the boundary that they threw up to him for 41 yards when he gets single coverage and is like, oh, thank you, Jesus. He runs up there and gets it. Like, that's the kind of simple stuff they can do. And frankly, when I think back to Justin's career, like, that's kind of what they hit on with Kirk early on. Before Justin was in these graduate studies 2.0, whatever, of offense with Kevin O'Connell, it was Clint Kubiak just doing slot fades, just simple stuff that Justin was just dominating on. And we can see how easy that can be for a quarterback. And I think that can help Sam, help clear his mind, as they like to talk about.
So Jefferson leads the league in receiving again, not shocking. Sometimes I think that people like solving problems with football. Me, you, it's like what we do here. We talk about, well, what's not working for the team? How might they fix it? That's kind of the game. And I think sometimes we forget to hit the emergency brake, pull it to a halt, and just say, do you see what Justin Jefferson's doing right now? Like, I don't want us ever to take for granted the absolute absurdity of the greatest receiver in the game right now establishing himself as a clear-cut Hall of Famer. But not only that, the contract gets done early. There's no drama with that. It was fake, invented nonsense, garbage drama from the internet, but not real drama with actual Justin Jefferson.
I thought they were going to trade him.
Well, a lot of people
for Malik Neighbors,
and their AI bots wrote articles. Jefferson should be traded to the Arizona Cardinals or something, whatever. Anyway, he wasn't, and he's just being the GOAT again. So I just don't ever want to lose that part of it, of we are getting to see sheer greatness. And there was this whole thing of, well, is Jefferson going to be able to do it without Kirk and all that? Well, I think we got our answer. And as we look forward here, and it's so relevant too, to the McCarthy discussion, which is around the corner, and Darnold, this guy's going to do it with anybody. He is going to be able to elevate anyone and everyone who throws that pigskin in his general direction.
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about the coach quarterback pairing. And yes, that's very important, obviously, but it seems like O'Connell and Jefferson can be just as great as the coach and Kirk Cousins or whatever, because Jefferson can elevate, transcend. This guy is so, whether you think back to all the memories and big catches he's had, there's just been so many incredible moments where he's lifted the team in big spots. Just throw me the ball. And I think that's why When you talk about 4th and 8 and Kirk Cousins, that's why it roils him so much, because that was the biggest spot of that 13-4 season, and the ball did not go his way. And that's the year when he lifted them in so many of those one-score games. So yeah, I think it's fun to take a step back and remember why we're doing this, why we watch games, why we love football. It's because of players like him. It's because of growing up and remembering whomever it was that you used to cheer on as a kid. These are the types of players that make those memories and create those fandoms.
I have sensed it, and maybe just because it's the internet, but there is a cynicism about Vikings fans that runs very deep from the things that have happened to them throughout the years and the lack of a championship, that sometimes goes to a point where we do lose perspective, I think, on what you are able to watch here. Yeah. And also maybe just take it for granted because they had Moss and Carter and then Diggs and Thielen come in. It's like, who couldn't be a good wide receiver here? But I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're talking about Justin Jefferson and Randy Moss, maybe even, or Jefferson, the fact that he came along with no drama ahead of Randy Moss for the greatest receiver in this franchise's history, which is wild because Moss is like top 5 ever.
No, but yeah, Justin is on trajectory to surpass every Moss record. He's on track to have the most yardage through a player's first 5 seasons, beating Moss in the franchise record, and he'll have the NFL record too for that eventually this year. You're absolutely right. And I think the drama and the fact that the longevity of Jefferson seems to be such that why would they ever move on from him? He's not, I don't think Justin's ever going to be fighting with his coach and then complaining about the catering and all the things that Randy Moss did, and getting traded and then coming back and then thanking Bill Belichick at a New England press conference while you're wearing Vikings gear. It's incredible. It's incredible. So I do not think Justin's going to have that. You're right too. Look at the Jamar Chase situation, and the Cincinnati Brown family's not without blame here. And frankly, they should probably be the first culprits to blame, but Jamar Chase is having a heck of a time over there just with that entire organization. Does not seem to be in lockstep with what they're doing. So here, Jefferson, the Vikings, they're all, not everything is always kumbaya, but with him, it certainly is.
One last thing on Jefferson. What, if you had to pick one thing about him that is the cause of this? And I know it's the accumulation of 1,000 things, and brilliance is always that, right? It's natural, it's training, it's effort, it's care, it's personality, all those things. We know that from watching sports. What if you were to rank all the traits that have resulted in Justin Jefferson being this, and also being able to get on the same page with Sam Darnold quickly and still do what he's doing? What is it?
Yeah, you're right. There's so many. And I mean, the physical attributes, you could start from everywhere. The hands, the eyes, the way he can bend in routes, just the flexibility of his entire body. But I would say it's his brain. I would say it's the mental makeup of who you are as a human being, because that's what separates Danielle Hunter from, I don't know, name any other player who's built like that, because there are a lot of them. I mean, not everybody's built quite like Adonis, but a lot of people are built 6'5", long arms, talented. That's why they get drafted early, and then a lot of them flame out. And what makes you different is how you approach the game. What makes you different is your daily habits, your intellect about the game. You just mentioned multiple times Jefferson's football IQ and how he's got thoughts that are grander than the wide receiver position. He's got thoughts about what the quarterback should be doing. He understands how all of this affects him. That's kind of stuff that you don't see from every great wide receiver. And every great wide receiver or player doesn't want that involvement. There are a lot of guys who just want to do their role. Just leave me over here. I don't need to be the guy who fixes everything. I just want to do my thing. Justin seems to not only embrace that, but have a good working knowledge that can help. And O'Connell likes to cheekily smirk and like sometimes kind of push him off and say, what was that quote he had last year? It was like, well, show me a good play for 3rd and 15 or something like that, when Jefferson's talking about getting the ball out fast. So they'll go back and forth, but I think that relationship is critical to growing a young player's mental curiosity. And that is one of the best things about Justin. And it all goes back to, his obviously his upbringing under Jordan and in a football kind of culture and life, but it also goes back to the fact this guy doesn't do anything but football. There's nothing but video games, football, sleeping in. There's some issues early on with him being late for meetings or whatever, but he's a team captain now. He seems to have matured and embraced his leadership roles now and kind of evolved in the way that you could only hope a player like that could evolve. And his relatively clean off-field stuff, I don't want to call it LeBron-like, because LeBron's is in his own class, but it's pretty clean in terms of just not being a guy that they have to worry that much about.
I think all of that is 100% correct. His single track mind, but I think if I were to pinpoint the one thing, it's his joy for all of this. It reminds me of
Sure.
Steph Curry. It's Steph Curry, like in that Steph Curry, before he goes into the locker room, shoots a three from the hallway to see if he can make it, that he never tires of this. He never tires of how much he loves football. We see him out there at practice. He is throwing around the ball. The other day, we were standing there. I probably mentioned it, just how strong his arm is. And he's catching one-handed balls and he's doing back toe taps. Practice is over. He's just messing around with his teammates playing with a football. I mean, when he got hurt, he carried around a football for practice that entire time. I've never seen a player do that before, because why would you? And yet I think he just has so much joy for every single part of it. For some influencer, sorry, I don't remember your name, did a thing trying to do his workout and got absolutely smoked, of course, by Jefferson. But he loves his workout. He loves the film. He loves watching. I think he watches tape with his brother of practice and breaks it down. There's just a nonstop joy for this, that I've talked about Aaron Rodgers before and how miserable he looks playing football. That's another thing for fans never to take for granted, is how much fun this gentleman has playing this game. And I think that's number one, because he never gets worn out, never gets tired, wanted to sign the contract to get back on the field. I believe he missed 4 OTA practices in total from his contract. So I think that's at the center of it. Let me just circle back to Vikings and Jaguars. Give me, I know, but just, you have to win. Like, there's no real analysis here. Just win the game. But give me some factors. Give me some X factors. And don't forget that there's a new kicker.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If this is a game, though, to introduce your new kicker, I think it might be this game. Preferably it might be at home, but I think these AFC South teams they've played, in the order at which they play them, I think they get progressively worse. Maybe I'm giving the Titans not enough credit. Maybe they're a little better than the Jaguars, but these are the two worst teams in the division, the Jags and Titans. I think the only factors are, again, if the Jags can somehow run the football, if Tank Bigsby somehow has a day, Travis Etienne somehow recaptures his Clemson in 2023 form last year with the Jaguars, that's their path to being relevant, to staying on the field, to keeping Justin Jefferson on the sideline. And if they can somehow score touchdowns and then make this a close game to where you have to worry about your kicker, that is where they could win. The Vikings, though, they just need to do the exact same themselves. They need to hand the ball off to Aaron Jones. They need to control the clock. They need to be, as Sam Darnold's been, incredibly efficient, finish in the red zone. Just give that new kicker, John Parker Romo, who goes by Parker, by the way, not John. Just give him some extra points. This is his first game, which is wild to me. They brought in 5 kickers for a tryout. They decided to sign him because he had been here before. He's got familiarity with the new long snapper they brought in. They were together in Detroit. So they feel like that is going to help them kind of coalesce quickly. But this is very hard for them to redo the entire field goal operation, or 2/3 of it, mid-season, and to go on the road too, doing so with a kid who's making his first ever NFL debut game here. So that is certainly going to be something that the Vikings want to build a lead and not have to worry about.
I was always told don't trust people with 3 names, so that's good. He made the right choice.
Parker.
By going by Parker. Hines Allen is a bit of a concern, I think, over with Jacksonville, because if there's one thing that could take it apart against Indianapolis, they had multiple turnovers that did not ruin them because Joe Flacco could not complete a pass. That is not likely to be as bad as far as the passing game. I mean, it could be with Mac Jones, but Flacco was in a really bad way there. And the Vikings controlled the ball so much that the defense didn't have to do a heck of a lot. But I do think that with an edge rusher like that, it's no longer, we just didn't even talk about edge rushers on the show. It was like, well, yeah, they got Brian Burns, but what's he going to do against Christian Darrisaw? And that was a pretty good bet all year long. Well, they've got this guy, but he's great.
Nick
and
Bosa, whatever.
Will Anderson,
Yeah.
it'll be fine. Let's talk about the other parts.
Yeah.
But now we do have to talk about that when the other team has an edge rusher. It could be dangerous. And I still don't think that Darnold is ever going to get rid of the ball quickly. And when I look back at the film this week, I had so many moments of, dude, you should throw. Oh, what a throw. And like even his interception, of course, is terrible, but you could see why he believes in his arm. He was waiting on one play for TJ Hawkinson to get behind a defender. DeForest Buckner jumps up in his face, all 6'7", and he just wings it kind of 3/4 sidearm around him and hits Hawkinson for a long gain. You go, well, that holding on to the ball allows guys to get open, and you kind of have to do it, but they have to protect because it can result in some big mistakes.
Yeah, and Sam has to be willing to throw while somebody's barreling down on him. I think that is something he's kind of learned as he's gone along in his whole NFL career, because Kirk was so good at that. Kirk knew he couldn't run. This is my only outlet. And he developed it over time of knowing, when do I have time to get this ball out? When do I have time to throw to that target? And I think Darnold can run, and he can eject backward out of the pocket as he's been wont to do. And I think that has been something where you've seen him kind of learn and evolve with that. And I'm glad you brought up the edge rushers, because Cam Robinson facing his former team, who's going to know him very well and know, as guys who practiced against him throughout training camp for all these years, they're going to know what works against him. They're going to know what schemes he gets either confused by or is vulnerable to. I do think that is a factor here, where if the Vikings get too confident in him coming off this last game, it might not look so smooth in that second game against an opponent who is going to know him very well.
What is your score prediction? I know what your team prediction is going to be, but how about a score?
I think this one is going to be a little lower scoring than maybe Vikings fans want, but I think it ends up being something like 24-13. I do think it's a multiple score win. I've been wrong before, but I don't have a ton of confidence in their opponent going into this game. I think Lawrence isn't going to play, it seems like. If it's Mac Jones, that could be a nightmare. We could be talking about another Vikings defensive touchdown, which would be their 4th in 9 games.
I was thinking, because it does seem to be trending toward Mac Jones, 27-10, probably.
Yeah.
I think they'll be able to move the ball. The defense is one of the worst in the entire league. And the fact is, the Vikings have played a lot of good defenses so far this year. Indianapolis is a much better defense than Jacksonville, and they move the ball on them. So we shall see how it goes. If they don't win, then the conversations will be very different on this here show
Yeah, they will.
next week. So we'll see what happens. I will be in Jacksonville doing the post-game show with Dane Mizutani, and then I got to fly out right after. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks, everybody, for watching all week long, and we will catch you next time.
Football.